The district I represent is about 100 miles from the border. Obviously, our friend, Mr. Gonzalez, is on the border. Obviously, our friend here, Mr. Cuellar, is on the border. And we visited many times, together down there. And yeah, sure. I would yield to the gentleman. You seem to want to jump in.
Yeah, no, thank you. And look, we're all on the same page. We want to secure the border. Nobody wants open borders. I certainly don't want open borders. We just got to figure out how we get there. But it takes a little input from all of us. I mean, I know we got a lot of smart folks on the Republican side, but there's some of us on the D side that we can contribute in getting there. And that's what we're asking. And we're just asking, how do we get there? You talk about the wall. Some of us forgot that somebody had said that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. So why have the taxpayers do that when we can use the monies to provide more security at the border? Most drugs will come in. If you talk about fentanyl, 90 to 94% will come through the checkpoints or the ports of entry. Why not put more money there? Why not jam where the fentanyl is coming from, where the precursors are coming in through 2 ports of entry in the Pacific side of Mexico? Let's jam it over there before they get over here to our U.S. side. If you want to stop drugs, look at the ports of entry. If you want to talk stopping folks, you got to have repercussions at the border. We're on the same page on that. But also keep in mind that people come into the U.S. so many ways. The #1 visa overstays come from not Mexico, but actually comes from Canada. Nobody's talking about a wall between the U.S. and Canada, but that's the #1 violator of visa overstay. So again, all I'm saying is when we talk about border security, let's be smart on how we secure the border itself. That's all. And I emphasize that. I don't know if you've been getting what I've been saying. We ought to put more resources outside the 1-yard line called the U.S. border. We ought to provide Homeland the authority to do more outside the U.S. border called the 1-yard line. And if we extend it over there and let Homeland do what they need to do outside the 1-yard line, I think we can be a lot more effective to stop drugs and folks are not supposed to be coming in.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Could you explain to these folks, because I've heard it from you, and obviously you have a tremendous amount of expertise living in it every weekend when you go home, what you're talking about exactly by that, so they understand about because that's something that we're all going to have to act on here in Congress to make that happen.
Yeah, and what we're talking about giving Homeland authority is there's certain, Homeland already has authorities to do certain things outside. They can pre-clear, they can do certain things outside before goods come in. But if we give them the authorities, and there's a proposed language that I think I've showed both of y'all, is to let them do where they can work with governments outside, the ones that are willing to work with us outside, where if they do certain work out there, instead of, once they go through that process, instead of having folks being deported here, they can actually do that with other governments. In other words, certain things that Homeland can do outside that they're doing at the border, give them that authority outside the border itself. And by the way, we need to provide more money for ICE, air ICE. You want to talk about comparisons, Mr. Norman? If you look at after the Title 42 went away, Title 42 from May 12th to just about a week ago, and you compare it to the same period of time, 2019, where there was another administration, this administration actually deported 253,000 people to over 150 countries, compared to about 160,000 that was done over the same period of time. I'm just saying all I'm saying is, let's agree that we want to secure the border. Let's just include people, other folks, not only Republicans, but Democrats and the Senate. I guess we got to include the Senate.
So the
right?
question is, getting back to time here, on a couple of the issues that you've raised. So you talk about the wall. I can't remember when you came to Congress, but I don't know if you remember. Did you overlap with Sylvester Reyes?
I did.
So Sylvester Reyes, who had been a former Border Patrol agent, supported construction of a wall in El Paso, a Democrat. He did so because he thought it was critically important for maintaining control of the borders inside of El Paso. Most of the evidence has indicated that it has been highly successful at managing the flow within the city of El Paso. Obviously, people go around. kind of the point. With respect to McAllen and Brownsville, I think the gentleman would recognize the traffic comes predominantly in the areas where there is not infrastructure and walls.
If you would allow me, I think that is wrong.
Well, I'm holding on to my time for a second. I'll let you answer. The fact of the matter is, in terms of the data, in terms of what Border Patrol has testified to and said here in this House, the traffic has predominantly been around the areas where there is no walls sitting in those two cities side by side. And, I mean, present what you want to say. I'm going to say that is what has been testified to in the Judiciary Committee before me. Now, maybe you've had different testimony. But I'm telling you what has been testified to us under oath here in the House of Representatives. The extent to which the wall that was created in California in the mid-1990s, the traffic went from something like 600,000 down to maybe 30 or 40,000, immediately following the creating of the triple-layered barriers. Now, where I will fully agree with the gentleman is that you can build a wall all the way from the Gulf of Mexico to San Diego, and it could be 100 feet high and 100 feet wide. But if you're going to weld the doors open, and if you're going to tell the world that you will be released into the United States, no matter what, if you come here and utter magic words, then that infrastructure is completely irrelevant. So my point is, if you're saying all of that is, we don't need to debate the wall. I support figuring out how to continue to get it. And one more thing on the wall to the gentleman saying about who's paying for it. Well, who left the parts sitting rusting in fields in the state of Texas? Who is paying people not to build the wall, as this administration has been doing? Who is now trying to say they're selling the wall parts off instead of actually doing what was already appropriated? And by the way, passed under law in this body, the Secure Fence Act, with language going along with saying you shall construct the wall. This body spoke. And then had language defining operational control that the Secretary of Homeland Security came before our committee and when presented with the definition said, yes, we are following that. We do have operational control, said it multiple times under oath, and then later the following year came back before the same committee and said, oh, I wasn't talking about that definition, even though it was the very definition presented with it. Obviously, out of respect to my good friend, I'll yield to you to respond.
And again, thank you. Look, I can't show this, but I'll leave it somewhere. I'll leave it somewhere.
Gentleman's free to pass it
Henry,
to
you
him.
can
He just
I
can't-
will. Look, if you look at Laredo, it's the second lowest crossing of people coming in. We don't have a fence there.
Right.
No, let me finish.
It's not the
No,
it's not the place where people are
let-
passing.
let me-
Eagle Pass right now is all the population because they're moving, the cartels are moving them there. Go ahead. I yield.
West Texas is the lowest crossing area. They don't have a fence, or they might have God's
There's nothing
wall
out there.
I'm just telling you the
There's
different
literally no one there.
different border patrol sectors. Laredo doesn't have a fence, and we don't have the crossings. We're the second lowest crossings it is. If you look at the numbers where most people are coming in, it's where we have a fence. Why? Because there's two profiles of individuals.
Eagle
coming in.
Pass?
No, can I finish?
Eagle Pass?
Gentlemen, just,
It's your
if
time.
I interrupt again, I'm enjoying the debate, so I don't want to stop it.
It's your time. Or
But
my time, but
just
your
please
day.
don't talk over one another, because the stenographer has to get it out. I am. I've shown up with my
Let me,
Coke,
let-
I have
let-
popcorn,
yeah.
it's a good debate. Gentleman from Mr. Roy controls the time.
That's what we're supposed to do. Henry.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. If you look at the fence in Texas, you have a river. The middle of the boundary is in the middle of the river. You don't have a fence there, right?
I mean,
There-
Governor
there's not.
Abbott might disagree at the moment, but yeah.
There's not. So the next closest place will be the riverbank. We don't have a fence by the riverbank for the 1,200 miles. Why? Because there's a treaty, and plus it's going to be washed away. So where is the fence in Texas? Where we have river, it's a quarter of a mile or a mile away. So the two profiles of individuals coming in are the ones that are trying to evade and the ones that say, aquí estoy, I'm ready to turn myself in.
Sure.
So what they do is they touch the riverbank,
Yeah.
they can claim asylum, they walk up a quarter of a mile or a mile away to where the fence is, whether you have a gate or no gate there. They'll come in and say, Border Patrol, here I am, and they turn themselves in. So how does the fence stop those asylum seekers when they're a quarter of a mile away? And again,
So I'm going to respond to that, and I'll give you the time back. Because this administration is creating the environment for that to occur. Because when we were having a proper debate about a fence, it was when we actually had individuals, including Jay Johnson, a Democrat, who said 1,000 a week was an emergency, who actually wanted to try to enforce the law. And now it says, oh no, we're just going to say, if you come here onto this dirt and utter those magic words, like I already conceded, a fence is only as good as the willingness of the people to enforce the law. So all I'm suggesting is that, you asked for time back.
So therefore, the fence doesn't work. You just proved my point because
Hold on.
it is the repercussions. You got to have repercussions. If you don't have repercussions, a fence is not going to work. Or with or without a fence, you have to have repercussions. You got to have the right policy. We're in agreement there.
So we agree on that, except to say that therefore a fence doesn't work because you open the doors and because you say if you come up to the line, you say if you welcome them in, the fence doesn't work. The fact is, fences, of course they work. And the question is fences plus law plus enforcement. The fence at the White House is only as good to know as if you're going to get your head blown off if you go over it. That's literally only as good as the fence will work. But it's there to stop flow and traffic. And if you cross the fence, there will be consequences.
So therefore, if you have a fence a quarter of a mile away or half a mile away from the river, how is that effective? You're now talking about policy. I'm talking about fence. We're
It's
talking about the
effective
fence.
if you enforce the law.
You got to have.
So in getting to the enforcement of the law, does the gentleman agree that the ICE memo under this administration, the guidelines for the enforcement of civil immigration law, and Kerry Doyle's memo, follow up, or any similar successor memos that are not allowing for the actual prosecutors to do their job because it's using prosecutorial discretion to say, don't enforce, that's undermining ICE enforcement.
So, and I support ICE. But we're talking about the fence. Let's talk about
But if you
the
let people into the
effectiveness.
country and
I'd
you don't
rather
enforce
use-
the law,
Gentlemen,
period,
again,
how
please,
good is
you
it?
can't talk over one another. As much as an Oklahoman, I enjoy watching Texans fight. Got to do it one at a time.
If we're talking about the effectiveness of the fence, that's one thing. If you want to talk about policy, that's a different thing. And so on policy, we got to have repercussions. And going back to why we're here, why are we here? We ought to be focusing on a CR so we can have time. We got 7 days, 8 days to make sure the government's shut down. If we have our government shut down, I've talked to Border Patrol, talked to them right before this meeting, talked to them last night, talked to them, I've been talking to them because I live at the border. I don't just go visit the border, and I talk to them. I see them at church, I see them at stores, I see them everywhere. They're worried about it. Yeah. And if we have a shutdown, we ought to defund Border Patrol. I don't want to defund Border Patrol. I want to make sure that we provide the money. They are going to be very demoralized if they have to keep working and not get a paycheck on it. And I agree.
Will the gentleman agree that they are massively demoralized in their current state and that they're sitting there at 19,000 out of 22,000? Would the gentleman agree that he has talked to Border Patrol agents who are demoralized right now?
They're going to be more demoralized.
Are they demoralized right now?
They don't like the way things are going right now. And they're going to, surely in 8 days, they're going to really not be very happy.
Well, but the gentleman would agree. They're demoralized right now based on the fact that this administration, in the words of Border Patrol, almost universally, not just the union, but the line guys that I know I've talked to, a lot of the same guys, that they're demoralized because they're sitting there saying, we can't do our job. We're processing people. And we're not patrolling the borders. The gentleman agreed that that's what we're hearing.
I agree. I've looked at the surveys of Border Patrol over the years, and they're probably one of the hardest hit on morale. So they're right now, they were there 4 years ago, and if we don't do something and provide them the paycheck that they deserve, they're going to be very demoralized.
So understanding that
the answer is yes. But they've been demoralized, and they will be more there right now, and I agree with you on that.
Right,
But
and
if
I'll
if we
concede-
don't give them a paycheck, I can tell you they're going to be really pissed off.
So I'll
Really
concede and
pissed
agree
off.
that of course they want their paycheck. Everyone does. And of course, Border Patrol will say that. But it's really important to understand that they're sitting there looking at that and saying, yeah, we want change though, because we can't watch more of our guys get so demoralized that their suicide rates are way up. They're coming to us and saying, guys, we're running out of the ability to keep doing this. That's the thing. Like, so we all get this. And so we can go round and round about the fence, whatever. But yeah, you're right. And you think you're making the point that, oh, because the fence is a quarter mile in or 100 yards in or 1,000 yards in, that means the fence doesn't work. I'm making the point that says, of course the fence would work if you actually enforce the law. And then if people come there, they know, well, you can come to the fence, you can say hi, or you can come to the gate and say, hey, can I come in? And you can say, no, you got to go to port of entry and you got to have a passport. Otherwise, you got to say, hey, I'm coming here seeking asylum, and it's very specific, and we send a message to the world. If you just say asylum, that ain't going to do it. Magically, everything would stop. And then we would have an actual honest debate about what you raised about the ports of entry. Because the real problem is, yes, we have drugs coming in through the ports of entry. Of course we do. I've sat in the same scanners that you've sat in, looking at the scanning trucks. We get 1 out of 10 that we're able to actually put through the scanner. So, okay, maybe we could talk about a budget with more scanners. But if you have everybody sitting there processing people in tents and they're not patrolling the border, then you have individuals who are getting into this country like how many gotaways, to my friend from Texas? 1 million? 1 million gotaways? Is that what we think we've had under this administration? Is that, what number do you think it
So
is?
there's been getaways under all different administrations.
1 million?
But let me say this. Let me say, this wonderful debate that we're having, discussion that we're having, you're making my point why we need a CR. Because we need time to work this out and get it done. So why don't we focus, instead of trying to get something that may or may not pass next week and not enough time, let's sit down, get a CR, so you and I can continue having this discussion.
Well, so I had
Let me,
there was some,
let me interrupt.
yeah.
Chair in this committee is traditionally always enormously generous with the time and will continue to be. But I would just remind both of you, we have a lot of members. A lot of
end my
members
time.
here that need to testify. They're here on a Friday afternoon. I know they've got other places to go. So if we can move along expeditiously.
I will, deference to the chairman's request, I will wind down. But I will say this. Smirks notwithstanding, I will say this. This issue is not going away. This issue merits far more debate than even we just had right here. This issue is going to get resolved. This is a non-negotiable reality for the representatives from Texas that we resolve this issue, and increasingly people around this country. And so whatever people want to do in terms of how we're going to fund government, this gets fixed. I yield back.
Thank you, gentlemen.